the last 34 years, Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Orlando has created some truly epic moments that redefine the term haunted house. HHN exists in the space between permanent entertainment and temporary pop-up attraction, enduring year after year with spectacle, managing to easily rival the immersion and innovation of even the most stunning experiences in the theme park world. Hold on to your jaws, because there is some phenomenal haunts coming up in the HHN Countdown. I'm SixBillium, and whether this is a welcome back or welcome to the series, here's where we currently stand in the rankings of 14 years and 125 haunts. Today, we'll finally visit the HHN graveyard as we close the book on a few events as we reach their #1 haunt, and of course, dive a little deeper into the effects and history of HHN. Now, while Horror Nights overall is an undeniably well-rounded event, 2024 brought something to HHN that had been missing for years: consistency. With Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire consistently better than the original. Gorgeous, evocative, surprising, and dare I even say scary? 2019's was certainly nothing to scoff at, but with the additional atmospherics of a threatening winter storm and Garaka, and those guttural cries, Frozen Empire regularly elevated the rudimentary into the remarkable, with some spectacular transitions and not a single inch wasted in the entire haunt. It's even a wonder how effective black walls can be when used the correct way, especially in contrast to the stark bright of this Frozen Empire. In fact, I'd argue sometimes in haunts, light is more effective than dark. But it's a perfect combination when you can nail them both. 2022's Fiesta de Chupacabras exhibited just how pulse-pounding kinetic misdirection can be. Shadows and movement everywhere in the corner of your eye, so much happening that you never quite knew where the real terror was hiding. Plus, victim scares that aren't just pointless fake-outs. HHN is so back, baby. I know that a ton of people weren't thrilled with the design of the capybara puppets themselves, but if this is the ugliest thing in the haunt, I think that's still a pretty high bar. Besides, any shortcomings were easily overshadowed by the highlights: the detailed streets, the intricate mask work of the villagers, and ominous alleyways between each scene did more than enough to compensate. Perhaps the most accurate way to sum up the criticisms is that this fiesta felt incomplete, like part 1 of a monstrous haunt. So let's consider 2013's Urban Legends, La Llorona, as the finale, smartly forgoing the scale and puppetry of Hollywood's original creation, hailed by many as one of the best haunted houses ever created anywhere. Orlando's Forlorn Tale had an opposite approach, a quiet, sorrowful ambience that permeated the scares throughout, adding a true sense of gravity to the haunting and downer subject matter. Violently desaturated in contrast to Chupacabra's vibrance, replacing the giddy tension with slow burn dread and an unforgettable climax set inside a watery grave. The best haunts are the ones that leave you with a feeling of something besides fear, which cements La Llorona as my favorite haunt of 2013, even though it wasn't quite the best. Hey guys, I think you're missing a word on that sign. Oh, never mind, I found it. It's right here. You could see but you couldn't say in 2014's From Dusk Till Dawn. Based on the El Rey series that had just premiered at the time in 2014, all who dismissed this haunt skipped a true hidden treasure. After an innocuous enough intro, the reveal of the ancient underground labyrinth was a tried and true jaw-dropper with 2-story sets and the scenic design dialed all the way up past 11. That poppy, claustrophobic introduction was a genius false facade of the true terrors ahead. A haunt that got better and scarier the more you trekked, with new surprises in every room, culminating in a vast finale that brought together every detail you'd seen. From Dusk Till Dawn easily could have been forgettable, but this sleeper hit defied the odds. Something that was echoed with this 2024 haunt, revealed to little fanfare with a generic fantasy theme right after Dueling Dragons didn't quite nail it. However, once inside Goblin's Feast, the humans weren't the only thing cooking in this one.
The food is escaping!
With some true moments of inspiration inside. I mean, the scenic design was so massive, it felt like a permanent attraction queue, just without a permanent attraction at the end. Open concept without feeling like a forced gimmick, and claustrophobic for just long enough to remind you that the pretty haunts can be downright petrifying too. A novel execution of harvest season without the same tricks and cherry syrup that's become tradition. This wasn't just a goblin's feast, but one for the eyes as well. But a feast of fun and fear? That easily goes to Yeti, Terror of the Yukon, which was gridlocked all season in a back and forth struggle for my second favorite haunt of 2019. I mean, the inspiration for this haunt, Slaughter Cinema's Attack of the Swamp Yeti, was hardly more than a fun boo box finale, and it seemed like this would be more of the campy ground kills. You see what I did there? But I was fooled. The scares consistently become more intense and bonkers. Suddenly this dude's here with that all-you-can-eat buffet, and then this guy just comes from out of nowhere. The onslaught from every angle just never seems to stop, and just when things start to slow down, there's this Yeti swiping at you to distract you from this guy waiting to pounce for a stealth kill. Crazy stuff. With the chaos of war masked by the stillness of winter, campground kills never had a shot at matching this. So I actually have another confession to make. I know 6Billium lying in 4K, what a surprise. But there's actually 126 haunts on this countdown. In the history of HHN, only a single haunt has ever returned to the event in near identical form. One considered by many to be the magnum opus. 2013's An American Werewolf in London, which is the one I'm counting, and not 2015's Return. An undeniably faithful adaptation with legendary puppet work that set the bar for what Halloween events could do. This unrelenting trek had werewolves around every unsuspecting corner. One of the best IPs to ever grace the event, the only true redemption arc for my least favorite year of HHN, which now becomes the first year vanquished to the HHN graveyard. Yet, even though I personally cite 2013 as the weakest year, it took a lot of big swings. The first time a Hollywood original appeared on the East Coast, a 3D haunt that wasn't funny, a park-wide IP scare zone, for as many things that didn't work, its biggest success propelled the event forward by leaps and bounds. With An American Werewolf, finally the puppet scare was sustainable for the Boo Box formula. And it was scary too. Even John Landis gave them his seal of approval after the designers had toiled on them for nearly 5 years. Which, I mean, is almost as long as this countdown has taken. The internal armature of these puppets became the launching pad for some of the most articulate effects you've seen and helped lay the foundation for the appearance of some up-and-coming pop culture monsters. American Werewolf might be the peak of HHN's technical prowess, but solving the puzzle of Major Sweet's Candy Factory may be just as monumental. Cramming a narratively rich haunt into a minuscule footprint sounds like a bigger disaster than all of these OSHA violations going on here, but somehow it worked. Not just well, but astoundingly well, with the best variety of the year. The supporting characters in HHN have been making a killing, literally, over the last few years, with Taffy and specifically Miss Treats stealing the spotlight from many recent main characters. Insanely quotable.
If the kids don't get you, I'm putting you in the trash compactor.
You will be smushed.
Jam-packed with details in absolutely every crevice. I guess if you can't wow them with the spectacle, wow them with the sheer amount of detail. No centimeter of space was wasted in this frighteningly funny tour resembling the glory years of HHN. Leave it to Cleaver, more like you can't beat the sweet, or something like that. Or maybe something like don't try the fireflies? This next haunt had been clamoring to be brought to life for over a decade. 2019's House of a Thousand Corpses did not disappoint. A smart choice for an IP, requiring hardly any effects or location changes, just a pure lunatic's playground of demented and disturbed scenes. Labyrinth and claustrophobic, packed with moments that let the Firefly family off the leash to show just how deranged they were, while never forgetting that sometimes there is comedy and true terror as well. The only fault I found was in the abrupt and uninspired final hallway. If IPs are fundamentally about living the movies, House of a Thousand Corpses managed to be better than its source, capturing that hellish, grimy aesthetic with only a slight commercial sheen. And more importantly, a truly redemptive haunt for the Men in Black tent. But not quite as redemptive as this glow-up. 2017's American Horror Story Volume 2. 54 spots higher than Volume 1, but an even bigger underdog is coming up soon. Rectifying every, and I mean every, shortcoming of its predecessor. The sets were intricate and spacious. The scares had a tenser build-up to a grander payoff. And most of all, Volume 2 felt like a true horror experience and not a glorified sizzle reel. From a haunt that I tried to skip most nights to one that I refuse to avoid, I could shower Volume 2 with praises all day long. Every design decision that was made was undoubtedly the correct one. Scarecrow the Reaping still may be the runaway hit from 2017, but for a long while I much preferred the mysterious siren's call of This American Horror Story. There's simply no way a Volume 3 would have been able to top this. For once, Universal's pullout game was on point. But onto the next American Horror Story, 2021's Puppet Theater Captive Audience. Among the scariest original haunts in memory, if Major Sweets was a quintessential revival of the aughts of HHN, Puppet Theater was the greatest sum of parts of Universal's favorite tricks.
I'm still rehearsing!
And I hope you see how these segues along the way come together to tell the story of a haunt firing on all cylinders. A little bit Dollhouse of the Damned with a sprinkling of Nightingale's Blood Pit, a smattering of the theatricals of the Insidious franchise, and of course a little bit of Nightmare Fuel, non-trademarked that is. Impeccable costuming, gratifying gore, but for the culmination of all that spine-chilling ambience to be for naught is among the worst finales. It just ended. But looking back, HHN is more about moments or pieces than it is the sum of parts. And everyone has a moment that defines the event for them. Mine is having "these nuts" whispered right in my ear. What a better way to sum up Jack the Clown's debaucherous reign in 2015's Jack Presents 25 Years of Monsters and Mayhem.
Now, for those of you who don't know Jack, you're in for a real treat.
Full of the terrors the event had conceived from the very start, only infected with the chaos and charisma of the defining icon of Halloween Horror Nights, Monsters and Mayhem did much more than simply connect a bunch of greatest hits back to back, instead having scenes and properties blend together, like the Nightingales nonchalantly crashing into the cathedral from Gothic. By celebrating nostalgia and not simply recreating it, Jack was able to inject horror into the unlikeliest of places. 2010 granted a peek at what was hidden behind the curtain for years, but 2015 smartly deviated to celebrate the moments that made us fall in love with HHN, and HHN Countdown in its own right. So I guess, in a sense, you could also call 2011's Nevermore the Madness of Poe, an icon haunt. After influencing countless properties, the Master's greatest works were brought to marvelous life. This massive, and I mean massive mansion produced some of the largest sprung tent scenes to date, notably the Telltale Heart paving the way for enclosed scenes with dreary sound design. Not just gorgeously gothic and terrifyingly tense, experiencing the literal madness of Poe as he succumbed to darkness gave an emotionally charged subtext to this haunt, something more than just an homage to the literary genius. This may have been my introduction to many HHN staples, but 15 years on, I still think they've never been in better form. And frankly, neither was The Walking Dead after Lucky number 3. The end of the line has often been imitated, but never once replicated. Orlando's longest haunt ever included the only outdoor facade and finale for a soundstage haunt. This arguably should have been the series' swan song. Let's be real, how could anything have topped these expansive set pieces found inside or the Walker-filled forest, which is still in the pantheon of best HHN scenes ever? Insane and bombastic, setting record after record, not only for the amount of actors in a haunt, but also in a single scene. Now, The Walking Dead 3 wasn't flawless, faltering with a few lackluster moments of Walker fatigue and cramming in just a bit too much story. What it comes down to is that the end of the line set a new precedent for HHN in a variety of departments, with innovation and wow factor, an acceptable excuse for the haunt overstaying its welcome. Told you the pullout game wasn't always strong. Yet, like many others in this episode, once again, an IP felt like a must-see destination event and not a synergistic people eater that belonged in the trash. Jesus, Mikey, we weren't talking about Halloween 2022. Get out of that dumpster. We're on one of the good ones, jeez. A decade ago, 2016's Halloween, Hell Comes to Haddonfield, was the true way to put Michael Myers right in the spotlight without removing any of the mystery or menace. This loud, disorienting police chase is in the top 5 scariest moments I've experienced in all of these haunts. The best example of suspense and misdirection out there. Plus, who couldn't fall in love with Dumpster Mikey? But the shape appeared as much more than an actor, with silhouettes and animatronics amplifying the slasher formula that was perfected in 2014's outing. Not completely faultless, but a unique and daring sequel that defied expectations to go down in history. Halloween was never this scary again. And neither were the Universal monsters after 2022's Legends Collide. We've gotta follow a hot take with another hot take, right? With near-perfect blockbuster storytelling in this thrilling battle royale, each scare managed to startle but also propel the plot. Meticulously placed actors across an excellent layout created a truly labyrinth feel, anchored by radiant, intricate Egyptian sets. With an expert escalation of tension and atmosphere, that climactic triple scare came right at the apex of all the action. Legends Collide may not be my favorite monsters haunt after my love affair with Bride of Frankenstein lives for my Valentine's trivia episode, but while I appreciate the balance that the Universal Monsters saga brings to HHN, let's get back to the gruesome and terrifying with 2023's The Exorcist Believer. Merciless is perhaps the best term for this heart-pounding gauntlet, and one that topped the original in terms of excellent facades. There wasn't a single damn actor in that scene, and I was ready to pee myself every time. And from there, it just never let up. Well, I could knock a few scenes in the scenic department if I really wanted to. The simple fact is that from the tag team scares to the absolutely bonkers actor placement and some narrow hallways that were almost too narrow, The Exorcist Believer was not only scary, but it made being scared inside of an IP at HHN a staple, an event, a statement for the first time in so long. Rightfully deserving of its ranking, 71 spots above the first go-around and around. All it took was a really good haunt based off a really bad movie. That seems to be a trend. Blumhouse Productions has had a hell of a ride over the last decade and a half, but would it be blasphemous for me to call them the unsung heroes of HHN, especially as of late? Before The Walking Dead arrived in 2012, Horror Nights had never really been about the most current horror properties, just those on their umpteenth sequel or reboot, except for way back when this was a synergistic IP. But the house that Blum built changed all of that after The Purge stormed the streets in 2014. Suddenly, those purgers were everywhere, almost every year, and horror properties that were in between sequels were a common appearance. Coupled with the few long-running TV series, the current horror landscape was reflected at HHN for the first time in a very long time. But while television may run for longer, HHN's headline shows began to waver in popularity, yet Blumhouse remained a constant, with multiple releases each year across all genres of horror, always keeping themselves in the conversation, a solid constant supporting character. 2025 may have changed that narrative just a tad, but we'll talk about that in the director's cut. Despite HHN and Blumhouse taking polar opposite approach to horror, the goal of these juggernauts remains the same: scares that linger when your head hits the pillow. Horror Nights allowed concepts like The Purge that aren't always fully explored on screen to do so in person, and at least most of the time, the results speak for themselves. 2024's Insidious: The Further was far and away the scariest of the year, and doubles down that Blumhouse are the new masters of HHN. But was it truly terrifying, or was part of the fun getting hyped up for the next big scare? Dreary, atmospheric, and of course jam-packed with jump scares, the strengths of the most recent haunt in this franchise lie not in what was shown, but what wasn't. The sets didn't need to be packed with detail when you never quite knew what was lurking in the darkness, a nightmarish liminal space that always kept you on edge for the inescapable horrors ahead. Rarely has such obvious misdirection been this freaking terrifying. Holding the honor of the scariest lipstick demon layer is like holding the record for the wettest night of HHN. It takes something truly special to beat out the rest. And while I think the minimalist approach of The Further came out on top in many ways, 2015's original Insidious comes at the very top for me, managing to have a fear factor that was fractionally more intense without relying on darkness as a scare tactic. There wasn't a moment of respite without something horrifying burning itself into your retinas. The unsettling ambience brought an entirely new breed of fear that lingered far after the jump scares had passed. Harrowing, unnerving, the textbook definition of supernatural horror. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't miss how intense this one was. It's not the house that's haunted, but that tagline really was a prophecy towards 2015's absolute best haunt, something not even Jack the Clown could top. And just narrowly missing out on the top 25, 2016's Tomb of the Ancients, also coincidentally the name of my in-laws, answered the age-old question of what if Indiana Jones was just a bit scarier? Magnificently costumed creatures littered this tomb, including a stellar Stiltwalker scare, but the scenic remained cramped and claustrophobic, full of low ceilings, tight corridors, and kinetic effects. I'm sure that moving floor wasn't at all a nightmare for the operations team.
Don't tell me that wasn't big fun.
Now that it's been, well, a decade, I think we're well past due for another ancient temple trek. And despite the last handful of years bringing the triple scare front and center once again, none have been more effective than the Ravens and the Runes. Which would have the reward for the scariest scene if it weren't for the Walker Forest in The Walking Dead: The End of the Line. There's a reason the scene is still talked about over a decade later. The Soil Shorts for the best actor scare just has to go to my buddy good old Dumpster Mikey in Halloween 2016. And while the Melted Plastic for best facade has unsurprisingly a lot of competition, I think it's unanimous that Puppet Theater Captive Audience is nearly unrivaled in its scale and detail. Finally, the big brain for the best effects in an unexpectedly low-tech episode goes to those good boy puppets in An American Werewolf in London. Truly trailblazing, and the evolution of these puppets over just a year is insane, which you'll see in the next episode. Whew! 100 haunts down, 25 to go, and 3 event years resting in peace. Our first haunt next time will send another event to an early grave, but which one? The content slate for 2026 is going to include a deeper dive into specific scares, effects, or scenes that have stood the test of time. So let me know down in the comments, from what you've seen in this countdown, what do you think deserves a second look? I'm SixBillium, this has been the HHN Countdown. Now, before they make it into the director's cut, let's take a quick segue to look at 2025's haunt season.